In today's video, we're making mosaic feathers, all for a truly unique wall hanging. They're just in time for the fall season. We'll talk about substrates, glass, cutting, tiling, grouting, and finishing off. Let's get to it. Welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we talk about tips, tricks, tools, adhesives, materials, and specific mosaic projects, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. Here in the States, we're in the fall season, which includes Thanksgiving. And when I think of Thanksgiving, I think of food, friends, gatherings, but also I think about what our country went through way back in the day with the Pilgrims and the Indians. So when I think of Thanksgiving, I think of feathers. Feathers have a symbolism beyond Native Americans. Some believe that feathers, when they fall from the sky, it's a connection to the spiritual world. Some believe that when you find a feather, it means that there's a guardian angel nearby. Now, whether you believe this or not, feathers are soft, they're unique, they're lightweight, and they've been depicted in art for ages. When I used to exhibit my mosaic work at art shows, my dad would help carry in my large containers of heavy mosaic work, and he would always say, "Why couldn't I have made feathers instead of mosaics?" And I expected his joke every time he helped me, and it always made me laugh. So, Dad, today's project is for you. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. For today's feather wall hanging, I chose 5 substrates. 2 of them are the same exact shape. They're wood and roughly 6 to 6.5 inches long. Since I'll be hanging the feathers by the stem, I need to make sure that the stem is long enough so that the material that I wrap around them to hang them from has enough room to go around the stem a couple times. And I'm not quite sure what that hanging material will be just yet. Wood feathers come in so many shapes and sizes, so I'll link a few options down below in the description in case you'd like to make some feathers of your own. And since the substrates are wood, I have prepped my substrates exactly how I prep all wood substrates for mosaics, and I'll link that video down below in case you'd like to check it out. Once I sealed the wood, I then painted both sides. Since I'll be grouting with a charcoal gray grout, I painted them charcoal gray as well. Painting my substrates ahead of time eliminates the possibility of me accidentally painting the grout later on. I don't like that look. I knew that I wanted each of the feathers to be a different color combination, but I wasn't quite sure what colors I wanted. What I did know was that I wanted the feathers to be exclusively stained glass. I did not want them to be mixed media. I had that vision in my mind. And I wanted to include a few different designs. I didn't want them tiled exactly the same. A few things to keep in mind when selecting your material, whether that's stained glass, vitreous, etc. I decided I didn't want any transparent glass, which means glass you can see through. I wanted opaque or non-transparent, and I'll show you why later in the video when we get to the tiling of the feathers. So I've selected my glass and color combinations, and now I'm ready to create the patterns. I've got a simple method for how you can create a pattern for your feathers. First, on a piece of copy paper, I trace the outside of the feather. Next, I drew the cut lines inside the feather, making adjustments where needed. For some of the feathers, I wanted larger blocks of the glass with no grout line. You might find it's easier to make the stem its own piece of glass instead of trying to incorporate it into one of the pieces at the top of the feather. So once I was happy with my drawing and design, I continued this process for each of the feathers. Once I was all done with the drawing and designing, I cut out the feathers and got started with transferring the design to the glass. We've picked out our glass, we've drawn our designs on our paper feathers, and now we're ready to cut some glass. The tools I'll be using throughout this project include the wheeled glass nippers, a glass cutter, I prefer the Thomas grip, running pliers of course, and a glass grinder or grinding stone. You'll also want a permanent marker to mark on your glass. I'll link all of the materials and tools down below in the description should you want to create some mosaic feathers of your own. To transfer your pattern onto your glass, you have a few different options, and you'll see as I tiled my glass that I used a few of these methods. We like options, don't we? The first method you could follow is to trace the outline of your feather onto your glass using a permanent marker, and then cut your glass. Then you could go in with your glass cutter and begin to cut down your feather into smaller sections of glass. A second method would be to cut your pattern out into sections and trace your pattern onto the piece of glass. As I finished cutting out each piece of glass, I would put it in position on the feather substrate so that I could stay organized with my pieces with what I've cut so far, but also see how the pieces are coming together. How are they fitting together on the substrate? Now you might notice that I've got a wider grout line, which means my glass is extending out beyond the substrate. I'm okay with that since this is a wall hanging and it won't be handled much at all. It's not like they're a Christmas ornament or something like that. They are going to be hanging on the wall and they won't be handled. I want a more exaggerated grout line and a little bit bigger feather overall. They aren't all like this with the overhang of glass, but some of them are. And because I knew I would have an overhang of the glass, this is why I didn't want to use transparent glass. I wanted the opaque and non-transparent glass to camouflage what's going on the back sides of the substrates. A third method would be to combine the first two methods. You might want to cut out the shape of your feather, but then use the pattern to make precise cuts for your individual sections of glass. And a fourth method could be just wing it. Cut your glass, see how close you come to your pattern. Maybe you don't have a pattern and you're just cutting glass and tiling your substrate. That is fine. It's perfectly okay for you to not have a pattern with this project. The final item I cut for each of the feathers was the stem. Once I was happy with all of the pieces on a feather, I would then glue them down using Weld Bond. Weld Bond is a white glue that dries clear and offers an excellent bond, especially for glass. I continued this process for each of the feathers until I was done with all 5 of them. I then let them dry for 24 to 48 hours before grouting. I'm ready to grout my feathers. I've gone over the pieces to make sure nothing is moving, and now I'm ready to mix up some grout. If you'd like to see how I mix up small batches of grout, I'll put a link in the description card down below so you can check it out. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm going with a charcoal gray grout. I've mixed up my batch. It's been sitting here for at least 5 minutes and now I'm ready to get started. Because I have glass extending out beyond the substrate, I'm going to take it slower than usual with grouting, just to make sure I don't knock anything off. I'll start by grouting on the front of the mosaic as usual, pushing the grout into the joints where the pieces of glass meet, going clockwise and counterclockwise gently. Once the main area of the feather is grouted, I'll move to the overhang areas. This might take a little longer. I need to make sure the grout lines are supported and intact between the pieces of glass while they dry and cure, which means I also need to be extra careful when cleaning off the grout so that I don't accidentally bump any grout out when applying grout to the overhang areas of glass. I found that applying grout to the back of the glass and the front provides a little extra support for that joint. Now that the feathers are grouted, I'll let them sit for 10 to 20 minutes and then carefully clean off the grout. Okay, it's been 15 minutes and I'm ready to clean off the grout. I will use dry paper towels, the little select size, but I will rip them in half to make them smaller and more manageable for those little sensitive areas of the overhang glass. I'll remove the grout in the same way it went on, in a clockwise, counterclockwise direction. And as I previously mentioned, I'm going to take things slow so that I don't knock the grout out that's between the overhanging pieces of glass. Okay, everything looks good. I'm going to let them sit here and cure for at least 48 hours before I proceed with hanging them. Something I like to do on mosaic pieces like these before I sign my artwork, you should always sign your artwork, and that is to take a damp paper towel and wipe off any grout dust that might still be on the back. I'll give it 5 minutes to dry and then I'll sign my name. An hour after that, I'll seal the back of my artwork with the same recipe I used to seal the wood substrate initially. I also painted over the grout in the overhang areas on the back just to reinforce the grout in those joints which aren't up against a substrate. Then I let them sit and dry overnight before I put the wall hanging together. Very exciting. Now is the time to put the wall hanging together. The feathers will hang from a simple wood dowel. Now there was a lot of trial and error that I went through as far as measurements of the wall hanging material as well as what the feathers will hang from. So hopefully I'm going to eliminate or at least reduce any sort of challenges or headaches you may get from trying to figure out your numbers. The dowel I'm using is 1/2 inch round by 36 inches long. I don't need all of that length, it's just how they are sold. I will need to cut it down. So before I can construct the wall hanging, like I said, I need to decide how long I want the dowel to be so then I can cut it down. I'll lay out the feathers to see what design and spacing looks good. Okay, I like how these feathers look. They're spaced evenly and far enough apart from each other so they don't touch. I'll measure their width and tack on a couple more inches to account for the hanger on each end. My dowel should be 19 inches long. To cut the dowel down, I have a simple miter box and a handsaw for wood. This shouldn't take too much effort since it's not a very thick piece of wood. Now, something to keep in mind when selecting what your feathers will hang from. Whether it's a dowel, tree branch, pipe, or whatever, you want to make sure that it's strong enough to support the weight of what you're hanging on it. I know this may be obvious, but it's just something to keep in mind as you're thinking about and shopping for what you would like the feathers to hang from. The first thing I need to do is decide what material the feathers will hang from. I'm open-minded to using one material for the wall hanger and another material for the feather hangers. I've narrowed it down to suede lace and macrame cord. I've got a bunch of colors to choose from. I just need to compare the colors of each of the hanging materials to the colors of the feathers to see which will look the best and provide the highest amount of contrast. And if I'm going to go with one material for the hanger and one material for the feathers, or the same material for both. I've decided on macrame cord for the wall hanger and suede lace for the feather hangers. I've used suede lace before with my feather ornaments, and I not only like the look of it, but the suede lace also catches the stained glass, grout, and substrate nicely so that it doesn't move much, if at all. To start, I'm going to cut a 4-foot piece of macrame cord and fold it in half and tie a knotted loop in the closed end. This will be the top of the hanger. Next, I'll loop the material around one of the ends of the dowel and tie a knot. Make sure that your hanger that you just knotted stays in the center of your dowel. I'll do the same exact thing on the other end of the dowel so that the wall hanging hangs straight and level. Next, I'll measure and cut 5 pieces of suede lace for each of the feathers. These lengths measure 20 to 22 inches depending on how long the feather is. I'll loop the material around the stem, tie it, and then tie a knot at the other end. If your material keeps slipping off of your feather's stem, you can always add a couple drops of weld bond to keep things in place. Just give them time to dry before you hang them. Keep in mind, your measurements might be different than mine, depending on what size feathers you use, how you lay out your feathers on the dowel, and how long your dowel is. And finally, I'll hang each feather from the dowel. And if you have a variety of lengths of feathers, you might need to move your feathers around to balance the weight of your wall hanging. There you have it, a unique wall hanging with a vibe all its own. You can swap out the feathers depending on the colors of the season, or if your home interior colors change, or you can move it to another room. I love it! It just turned out exactly as I hoped. I love it. It makes me so happy. Question of the day, let me know in the comments if you've made a unique mosaic wall hanging. I'd love to hear about it. Give me some of the details. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up as it really does help my channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification so you never miss a single upload, and let me know in the comments if there's something you'd like me to cover in a future video. I'll see you soon. Bye. Oh, what is going on? I cannot speak today. And of course, life is doing so good. I got a little teary-eyed there. Ooh, we're almost there. Oh my gosh. Look how cute this is. See, and you can just move them to the side. They move so easily. I love it. I know I said fall, but I'm gonna leave this thing up year round. Oh, yeah, I am. It's so cute. I love it. If you're looking for more mosaic inspiration, you can check out one of these 2 videos. Until then, see ya. All right, I gotta go pick my son up from school, so we done. And that's a wrap.